Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. It's the top of the hour, so we are here live, and we're going to just let a few more people trickle in over the next 60 seconds or so, and then we're going to kick things off. How's everybody doing out there? Drop me a hi in the chat from wherever you're from. Love to see where we're getting people joining in. I'm in Minneapolis. How about you, David?
I am in beautiful, sunny San Antonio.
Oh, love that. Hi from SF. I bet we have a large SF contingent today. That's where our Beacon's office is based. Not too chatty of a group, huh? That's okay. They'll ask the important questions. All right. I think we have a critical mass to get started. So, Atlanta, NYC, Florida, Austin, there we go. Long Island, amazing. Well, we're so excited that you all are here. We're so excited to be able to present this Insider's Guide to UGC, and I'm really grateful to have David from TINT here to talk about it because I'm going to learn just as much as everybody else is today. So with that being said, I'm really just going to hand it right on over to you and let you take things from here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting me share with your community, for being part of this conversation today. My name is David Ramirez. I am the Senior Marketing Manager here at TINT. TINT has been around for over a decade, working with over 5,000 brands. So on the brand side, helping them discover, curate, and capture the best that the internet has to offer. So we work with influencers, creators, user-generated content, both prompted and un. And so huge marketing nerd, please ask the hard questions. I always love a webinar where I can get stumped. And so that is my challenge to you. Ask something hard. Just know that I can't provide legal advice because, yeah, that's, I'm not going to get in trouble. I love y'all, but not enough to get in trouble and go to jail for you. So thank you to Isabel and the entire Beacons team for letting me ramble at you today. Of course, please drop questions, thoughts, complaints, comments, concerns, or remarks in the chat. And if not, you can also put a question in the little question bar on the side, and we'll have plenty of time at the very end to have that conversation. Isabel, did I miss any housekeeping? Are we good on moving forward?
No, that's great. I think we're excited to learn.
Okay, well, no pressure. Let's do the thing. Well, let's start at the very beginning. It's the very best place to start. So what is user-generated content? In its most technical sense, it is any content about a brand created externally from the brand. And so that could be content, again, from customers, from reviewers, from critics, from the media, from creators and influencers, anyone that's talking about a brand or business that is not employed by the brand or business is creating content that we call UGC. And that can be a little bit confusing because there's lots of different buckets of user-generated content. It's kind of like Baskin Robbins. There's 31 flavors. I know we have some Gen Z on the chat. So Baskin Robbins, that used to be their marketing tagline a million years ago. You can see the gray coming in, y'all. It's okay, I'm your millennial friend. I'm not one of those Xers. So we will go ahead and look at some of those different buckets. I like to sort of divide them into three main pots. UGC really sort of has like two sides of the same coin. There's prompted UGC, which I know a lot of you who have already reached out or dropped in questions are really thinking about. This is the UGC made by influencers and creators like yourself. So prompted just means that a company is saying, hey, we need content. We're not getting it organically from our customers and from our users. And so we're going to lean on creators on the internet to go ahead and make some of that content for us. On the other side of that coin is organic UGC. A lot of us do this. My friends know that once we go to a restaurant, Instagram eats first. And so we got to take a picture of the food of the place that we're at, or we take a selfie, or we write a rating and review on Amazon, or we give feedback through a feedback form. And so that's organic UGC. You're an actual customer or user of a product and service. And so you're providing that sort of quick fire reaction to it. Up next, we have influencer content. I know you've probably had some great conversations about influencers. We're not going to get too far into influencer and creator land, but I just want you to keep those three sort of buckets in mind, because as you start to think about working with brands, as you want to do business with brands, especially if you're looking to be a UGC creator, it's important to know, are you creating user-generated content? Are you creating influencer content? Or are you creating creator content? Because each one of those has sort of a different outcome, a different expectation. And brands, especially large major brands, actually have different budgets for each one of those categories. And so you don't want to be hitting up someone that doesn't do prompted UGC, only does organic UGC, or someone that only does influencer agreements. They don't do creator or UGC agreements, right? So, well, we'll talk a little bit more about the research here in a second. Now, here is the secret sauce. If there's any slide I want you to look at and understand and figure out in this entire conversation, this is the one. So anyone that's gone to marketing school or been on YouTube, like marketing YouTube for more than 30 seconds, you're going to hear the term funnel. And if you ever go to a marketing workshop, it's a drinking game. Every time someone says funnel or flywheel, you just have to take a shot. And then at the end, you're going to be dead with alcohol poisoning because they're going to say it so many times. It is like the thing over and over and over. But whether you are buying real estate or a car or a ride to space, if the letters are a little fuzzy, we'll also have the slides available later, and I'll talk through it really quickly, but thank you for calling that out. Whatever you're buying, you go through the same steps. First off, you have to be aware that that product exists somewhere on the planet, somewhere in the universe. Next, you have to think about, do I want to buy this versus that? Finally, is conversion. Do I have to know that I can get it in red or green or large or small or spicy or not? Loyalty is that I'm going to come back because I love it. And then advocacy is I'm going to tell all my friends how great this thing is because it's the best thing on the planet. Now, each one of those types of user-generated content has a space on that marketing funnel that they really, really perform well in. Organic UGC, you see, is going to take up a giant swath of it because there's lots of different types. And once someone gets the rights to that, you can do a lot with it. Creators are really, really powerful all the way down into loyalty. And so if you're thinking about being a creator, if you're really focused on growing your own brands and channels, know that that is your superpower, is your deep connection to an audience and to subject expertise. Brand content goes the full funnel, again, because they can do whatever they want and say whatever they want. Influencers, again, are really, really powerful down to loyalty. And then prompted UGC, created UGC, there's lots of different ways that people have talked about it. It has a very, very narrow space that it's super effective in. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, right? Because if a company is already spending money on the awareness piece, if they already have systems in place for the loyalty piece, they may just be looking to solve that little piece right there in the middle. And so part of it is really understanding what is the content that you're creating, what is the message that you're putting out in the universe, and where exactly within a business are you able to provide value to that brand or business. So really thinking about, am I a creator? Am I an influencer? Or do I want to be a UGC creator? And can I really help these brands and organizations perform well in this funnel? And so if this is unfamiliar to you, this is marketing theory 102. Go on YouTube, just look up marketing funnel. There's going to be 900 million videos. Find one that's been watched a couple of times and just go through it. But the more that you are educated about sort of the theory behind why brands are soliciting creators and influencers, I think the better and the more equitable conversation you can have with the brand, right? You don't want them having all the power. You want to make sure that you can have a sincere and equitable conversation with them as you negotiate rates, exchanges, and content. And slide. There we go. Now, as you are thinking about creating brand-ready UGC, this is UGC that a brand can see out in the wild, reach out to you, and run with. First off, my number one rule is mind the music. Just because you are able to use your Spotify top 80 that's on the list, just because that you can have great trending audio. And for a lot of people that are influencers and creators, that's a method that they grow their audience. It's by skating on trending audio or sound effects. On the UGC side, a brand has to clear that audio. And if it's the latest hit from Beyonce, right? If it's the latest Taylor Swift song, if it's a hot new track from some DJ, those are really expensive and really hard to clear. And so really mind the music. A lot of the best ready UGC is not going to have any music, or it's going to have sort of stock music or music that can be deleted out from behind it. So really be mindful of the music. Next up, watch for the logos. A lot of creators that are out there have really cool spaces. Obviously, I aspire to be one of you. I have my colors on. I have different things in the background. But if you look really closely, you're going to see there's not a lot of identifiable logos. And that's because if I'm creating content for a brand, they don't want to see the polo logo on your shirt. They don't want to see the brand poster behind you because it draws attention away from the product or service that they're trying to get you to talk about. And so it's cool to have your space built out. I think that's sort of the expectation, especially in creator land, but really be mindful of what other logos or what other noise there could be in the background, right? Is it something distracting from that story? Next up, be professional but authentic. And I think this is a place that a lot of UGC creators often go wrong. A brand has super deep pockets and great budget to do a professional photo shoot. If they are looking for UGC creators, it's not because they want a professional photo shoot. It's not because they're looking for their next model or the next person to put up on the billboard, right? They have agencies and processes for that in place. They're looking for people that look and behave and act like their customer base to engage with their product or service and allow them to tell that perspective or that story. And so I've seen a lot of UGC creators that have way too many lights, or they're in a white box, or they're, doing stuff that you would do on a professional photo shoot. Again, that's not what the brand is looking for creators to do. They're looking for that authentic human experience. And so how can you as a person authentically connect with that brand or service? Do you actually like it? And I think faking it, I mean, there's always a little bit of faking it, right? Like if someone's paying you enough money, I will say that I like Coke over Pepsi, which is fine, right? Like there's a little bit of that. That's just marketing. But if you don't like soda at all, then maybe don't be a soda UGC creator, right? If you hate cats, first off, go to therapy because what's wrong with you? But second off, like maybe don't create content for the Purina cat campaign, right? Really think about stuff that you actually like and resonate with. If you're a big foodie, then focus on food content. If you love to travel and explore, then focus on locations or destinations. Really, really, really think about stuff that you truly love because no matter how great an actor you are, you're not going to be able to hide with your inner feelings, right? Brands want to see that deep connection to a product or service. And that leads me into number 4. Really think about how a user would use this, right? Like if you are a customer of a product, how would you actually use it, right? If you're anything like me, right? I had someone say, "Wow, you're looking really fresh this morning." I'm like, "Thank you. It's medium coverage foundation." Right? So really think like, okay, how would I actually be applying this? How would I actually be using this? Are you always going to have 600 million lights and a mirror with a ring light on it? Or are you actually putting it on in the parking lot on your way to campus or on your way to work? Right? Again, it's that authentic, real user experience that is the value that creators can give to their brand. So really think, how would an actual user use this, not just someone who's creating content in their space? And then lastly, this is an interesting one that I've heard a little bit of on the brand side, and I'd be curious for anyone that's a creator out there if you've gotten a little bit of this, where brands will reach out and then they don't hear back for like 2 or 3 weeks. In marketing land, especially in agency land, things move at crazy speeds, right? Usually we're looking for like 48 to 72-hour turnaround on any sort of like messaging or conversations. And so if someone reaches out because they're really interested in you, because they want to work with you, because they just want to do a screen test or have a conversation, that doesn't mean you have to get on the phone in the next 2 to 3 days. That just means like you have to write back, let them know you're interested, and continue that conversation forward. There's a lot to be said for professionalism in the space, and that's why a lot of legacy brands have a little bit of an ick working with some types of creators and influencers. And the way that we get around that is we, as an industry of creator and creative professionals, just stepping up our game and just being better about replying to email. And it can just be an email. You don't have to get on the phone. It's okay. I hate getting on the phone too. I feel you. Now, that's on you creating content. Let's say, and this is a question that came up a bunch of times as people were submitting thoughts ahead of time. I want to know more about brands and what sort of content a brand might use. A lot of that's going to come down to research. There are teams of brands or brand teams out there that are looking for creators constantly. There are folks that are using tools like TINT to source creators, but a lot of them are often really small teams, right? Their social team might be 1 or 2 people, even though it is an international brand. And so part of it is going to be on you looking to see if you might actually be a good match. So first off, look and see what sort of content does that brand that you want to work with use. If they're only using super high-end, super photoshopped celebrity content, odds are you're probably not the person that's going to break through and make them decide to use UGC, right? You want to find brands that are using influencers, that are using creators, that have some sort of affiliate program in place or have ever used affiliate stuff. You want to use folks that are at big events like Coachella, right? You want to find folks that actually understand and work with that creator ecosystem. Don't think just because XYZ brand has been around for 180 years and they have super deep pockets, that's the one you want to go for. Because if they're not looking for anyone in that space, then you're just spinning your wheels. You're wasting time on that. Next up, what sort of campaigns does that brand run? I always include this because the first part shouldn't scare you off from reaching out to big brands. Some big brands do a lot of the billboards and the magazines and the glossies and the models and all that fun stuff. But look through all their socials, look through secondary brands if they have like a for kids or for women or athletics or high fashion, right? Look at some of the sub brands within a brand. Maybe some of the secondary brands use a lot of creator content, or maybe there's a lot of stuff that is using influencer content, or maybe there's a lot of stuff that if you look at it, it's posted by the brand, but it looks like it was created by a UGC creator, right? Really look at all the stuff that's already in place, because again, there's so many businesses out there. You don't want to waste time on one that's not going to perform for you, but you want to find one that potentially could be a good match. What collaborations are already in place? That's why I love organizations like Beacons, because they help create such a great ecosystem of people to talk to each other, right? Like, oh, I just got this great brand deal. Oh, I'm working on this cool project. So you can find out who's working on stuff, and what collaborations might be going on. If you hear in one of your communities, oh, this group is looking for creators, and you're a creator, that's a great chance for you to potentially reach out and work with them. Or maybe they say, oh, they don't work with content creators, they work with influencers. Or they're not looking for influencers right now, they're looking for UGC creators specifically, right? So there's a lot to be said for us to all support each other within our ecosystem. So just because you might not be creating that type of content, maybe you have a friend or a buddy or someone that you exchange funny memes with in your community, that would be a perfect match. And so again, I think we as a community need to work together to share the love. Just because I'm not a good fit doesn't mean that Isabel's not a good fit, doesn't mean that someone on this call is not a great fit. So really start networking, start building up that network of other creators and influencers. And just because you don't have a collaboration in mind right now, it doesn't mean that there won't be a great collaboration in 6 months, in a year, in a couple of years, right? Like this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And so you got to get those structures in place right now. And this is just part of your training. And then what language does the brand use? This is not literally like, are they speaking English? Are they speaking Spanish? Is it French? Is it German? Is it Klingon? This is actually like, what language are they using when they talk about products or when they have content that's from influencers or creators? Let's go back to that marketing funnel. If they're talking about learn about this product, become aware about this product, share with your friends about this product, right? Those can often show that they're focused on that very tippy top of the funnel. And as we saw before, influencers and creators do really great there, but UGC creators do not. If they're talking about consider buying this, think about buying this, try buying this, try this new thing, right? That's that consideration language. And so that's a space that UGC creators do gangbusters and really kick butt. And so look at the campaigns that they're currently focused on, because that's a great way to see where you might fit in. So even though, again, you might not know what type of creators they're looking for, really look at that language and definitely, to Isabel's point, mimic it, right? The more that you can be educated and speak intelligently, and when I say intelligently, I just mean speak in business speak to an agency or a brand, the better it is that you can have those conversations and you make sure you're not getting left out in the cold. So brand research is really, really important. And I think this is one of those competitive edges that those of you who are on this webinar can have over someone who may not know that this is something that they need to be doing. And you don't have to start a Google Doc. You don't have to start like an entire mega list, right? You can do this on your phone. You can sit there and scroll. It does not have to be super formal. Like this is not your college class where you have to make a binder for every brand that you're auditing, right? Like you can casually do it and then just make notes and keep them in a place where you can actually reference them as you start doing your outreach. Here are 3 nevers for my UGC creators. Number 1, Never leave a rating and a review for a product or service you have not used. This is a great way to get yourself sued. This is a great way to get yourself deplatformed. And this is just a great way for you to burn some bridges, which you see is one of the later points. There are laws in North America, so US, Canada, Mexico. There are laws in the EU. There's laws in the UK. There's laws in East Asia. There's, I think, something like 75 countries have specific laws about misleading ratings and reviews. And in the US especially, we're getting especially litigious around it. And just think because you're a small creator doesn't mean that you're immune to it, right? We've seen in Florida, we've seen in the Midwest, actually. I don't know if it was Minnesota, but we've seen in the Midwest that some smaller creators were getting pulled into larger lawsuits because they were complicit in faking ratings and reviews. And so just be really aware. You should never, ever, ever do that. Next up, don't make an unqualified health claim. Just because XYZ thing helped with your constipation doesn't mean that you can say this thing cures constipation. Unless you are a doctor, unless you're a GI, unless you're a nurse or have some sort of credential, you shouldn't be making unqualified health claims. And if you are one of those, you know that if you say that on the internet, it also opens you to liability. And so everyone knows, if you're like my TikTok feed, half of them are like discreetly stirring up their supplements as they're doing their talks or their lives, right? Have we all seen that where they're like, oh, this is not sponsored, but I'm drinking my tea. This is not sponsored, this is just water. So yeah, don't make unqualified health claims, because that's a great way, again, to open yourself up to liability and to potentially turn off brands from wanting to work with you. And then lastly, this is one that I always like to call out, is never burn bridges. Just because this person that you're working with or talking to is the junior social media person at XYZ brand today, doesn't mean that they're not going to be the CMO of that brand in 3 to 5 years, right? Especially in marketing, communications, digital media, people grow their careers really quickly. There's lots of mobility. People jump from job to job, usually every 1 to 2 years. And so don't burn bridges, because you never know if that person that you have that interaction with is not going to be the head of an agency in 2 or 3 years' time, or is not going to be the person that's booking talent for XYZ organization in the future. And so, have your moment, feel your feelings, but always just really be professional, because you never know what it's going to be further down the line. I recently found out, and again, feeling old as an elder millennial, that one of my interns is now leading a team of like 15 marketing people. And I remember her when she was a junior in college, just kind of this, I'm not going to say too much about her because she may be on this webinar and then she'll find me and fight me. And she's much younger than me, so she'll probably win. But yeah, she's now leading this giant marketing team bigger than the team that I administer. And so, yeah, you never know where people are going to land. And Casey, if you're here, I love you. Please don't fight me. You know where I live. You're my favorite.
That is so great. You were just jumping into this. I was just gonna say the new FTC guidelines is what made me think of that. But quickly before you do jump into that, the other thing is you just because other people are doing it too doesn't mean that it's not wrong. Like the Kevin James meme that's circulating right now with the Getty Images stamp. There are a lot of people who are hopping on that meme trend. But Getty's gonna come after you, especially big brands, if you're using their image without having paid for it and for permission. So love those points.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And also, it's not a very good meme to start with. Y'all, who are we kidding? There's better stuff on the internet. Is that really what we're doing? Miranda, what if a company gave you a sample script and they just ended up using it? So this is where we'll talk a little bit about this further. This is why before you do any work, you should have some sort of letter of intent or statement of work in place. We can talk about this in a little bit, but no, that's a great point to bring up. It requires ethical acting on both the side of the creator and the brand. And just because a brand does something, again, we'll talk about it. Sorry, I don't want to get too derailed, because once we get into the FTC, it just gets messy. So yes, if you have not read the Disclosures 101 for social media influencers, this one came out in 2019. This is the actual book, and then there's addendums that come out every year. But I always like to point out some of the language. So first off, any advertised message that a consumer is likely to believe to reflect the opinions, belief, findings, or experiences of a party other than the sponsored advertiser, right? So really think about any message. If you just say, "This is great, this makes me happy," you are giving feedback, you're giving credence to the product or service. So going back to the nevers, never give a fake rating and review, even if it's just verbal, even if it's just spoken that way. And then make sure you have lots of transparency. And I think this is why UGC creators are in a kind of unique space, because you're giving it to the brand for them to post on their socials rather than posting it on your own. But if you are ever posting anything on your own socials or own channels, make sure that it's really clear, really transparent, that it's sponsored, that's an advertisement, that is hashtag ad, hashtag advertisement, and don't bury it like in the first comment. Don't bury it way down the line. Like there should be no question whether it's a piece of sponsored content or not. And that's why we've seen TikTok add that like sponsored banner at the bottom of their captions. That's why Instagram now has sponsorship tools. That's why Facebook is rolling them out. TikTok is rolling them out. X, we're not going to get into because it is a post-apocalyptic hexscape. But yeah, just really, really be transparent about it. If you're making YouTube content, you're going to see a lot of new tools coming out in the next like 16 months, where they're even adding additional bumps that have to be put in to make it clear that there are sponsored elements of a video. And so a lot of it's coming down the pipeline. There's going to be legal changes potentially in the next administration or the like after the next election. So just be mindful that things are going to change really quickly, but a great place to kind of start the conversation and start learning about some of the legal things that could impact you is going to be the Federal Trade Commission. Just Google FTC and then Disclosures 101 for social media influencers. It'll have this image on it, and then read through all the edits, all the updates, and it's a great place to go and learn, even if you don't have legal counsel. All right, someone took my content. This was a question that came in. Now what? I will give you a little bit of advice. I do always like to preface this with saying I am not a lawyer. I did drop out of one of the top law schools in Texas. So take anything that I say with a grain of salt and a shot of penicillin. So yeah, someone took my content, now what? First off, I always recommend check the terms of service. We've had a couple of folks that we've worked with that kind of freaked out when they didn't realize that there is native sharing within TikTok. There is native sharing within Facebook and Twitter and Blue Sky, and Threads is offering native sharing now, right? So first off, make sure that if they're taking your content, that it's not just them natively sharing it. That's permitted by the terms of service of the platform. There's nothing more embarrassing than like freaking out and then realizing, oh, they just reposted it and I didn't understand what was going on. Second off, send them a message on social. I always like to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? It makes you look like a pro, like, hey, that's my content. What's going on? After that, I like to complain on the platform. You can see a little screen cap here. This is the Instagram copyright report form. There's one for TikTok, there's one for Facebook, there's one for YouTube. Report them to the platform, because if they're ignoring you, they can't ignore the platform because it'll bump right up to their inbox and it'll alert everyone that has access to that account. And so even if it's like one person ignoring you, it'll alert everyone. So usually the entire brand team at a brand, which is like the social and comms folks, will get a notification that something's going on, they can strike against them. After that, you can send what I like to call a nasty gram. And so that's going to be your C&D, your cease and desist. And so it just needs to be one page. You can find C&Ds for your state online. Just Google cease and desist form letter. And you usually send those to either legal at XYZ brand or DMCA at XYZ brand. We're not going to get too far into DMCA. There's actually an entire like letter with requirements when you're filing a proper Digital Millennium Copyright Act complaint. But if you don't get a response from legal, you can often look up the name of the brand and then add the letters DMCA to a Google search, and it'll give you a form for a person you can contact if you think someone stole your content and you're trying to get it taken down or trying to get reparations for that. And then lastly, if all of these fail, lawyer up. Sometimes our initial reaction is to put someone on blast, which is great. But if you put someone on blast, a lot of the time they'll just focus on doing spin and they won't put money in your pockets. And so lawyering up is often the best thing to do if you exhaust your options. If you do not have the money for a lawyer, there's lots of legal aids. You can look up legal aid in your city and find resources for you there. But yeah, sometimes you may have to just go to an attorney and really think like, what's the value of the content that they took? and how can I protect that going forward? So it sucks when someone takes your content. I've had it happen many, many a times. And as I've worked through this workflow, like usually by the time I hit the email to legal or DMCA, I find a resolution. I've yet to have to lawyer up, and I've been working in social for almost 15 years. So this is my recommendation. At this point, it is a time-consuming process, which is not fun, but this is the flow for that. As we approach the Q&A section, I want to make sure we have plenty of time for all of your questions. I have two big numbers here on the screen. Does anyone want to take a few seconds to guess what either of those numbers are? 33.2 million and 480 billion. I'll give you like 30 seconds to either drop a question in the Q&A or to guess one of these numbers. Guess the second one. I'm going to start because y'all don't got time for me. So 33.2 million is the number of brands in North America. And so I like to share this number when I'm working with influencers and creators because it can seem like the end of the world if you don't get that gig with that brand you want to work for. That is the number of brands in North America. So sometimes it's like applying for a job. Well, it is applying for a job because you're trying to get paid to do your thing. Just because that one brand said no doesn't mean that all the brands are going to say no. So 33.2 million brands in North America, and Isabel said it's so great, plenty of fish in the sea. Now the bottom number, 480 billion, that is how much the United States spent on marketing and advertising last year alone. And so if you were to divide those two numbers, that means that there's plenty of money to go around. There's plenty of brands to work with. It's just a matter of finding your niche, finding your voice, finding your perspective, making great content, and then doing the work to find a brand that matches with you and your worldview, your perspective. So it can really suck, can really hurt. Subtract Taylor Swift, that's true. Well, a huge portion of that is just the Barbie movie spend, but actually Barbie spent like $1 billion, so that's a whole separate conversation. Isn't that crazy? Anyways, distraction, sorry. So yeah, just really, it's a numbers game, and a lot of the time you just have to sort of put your head down, do the research, do the work, send out a bunch of letters. So don't get disheartened if you don't get that match right away. Just work the numbers. So before we jump into Q&A, a couple of quick plugs. On my side at Tint, we do a monthly, sometimes it's twice a month, depends on how much juice we got going, newsletter. It's followed by over 58,000 subscribers. Again, Tint is on the brand side. So if you are a brand or organization, we'd be happy to work with you. We don't work with individual creators or influencers. So if you're on the brand side, we look at brand crushes, brands that are doing amazing social stuff, insights from top brands. And so this is great for influencers and creators to follow because you can see what brands are doing cool stuff out in the space. And it's a great place to sort of start doing some preliminary research, see what hashtags are trending. And again, it comes out once a month, sometimes a couple times a month. And then I can tease a little bit, depending on where you live in the world. In 2024, we do Future of Marketing Live. We'll be doing back on the road. And so just keep subscribed to the newsletter because in 24, we'll be hitting some cities, San Antonio, Austin. Like, what can I officially say that has already officially been announced? New York. I think we announced Chicago. If not, you'll have to lie for me. And then a couple of other cities that have yet to be announced. So it would be a great chance for you to come, potentially interface and meet brands and hang out with the team at Tint. And Isabel, I think you have a plug for your awesome community.
Yes, thank you so much. This is incredible. I learned a lot. And it's great to see that, like, a lot of the things you're talking about, these are the things creators in the Beacons community are talking about. I already dropped a link in the chat, but I'll put another one in. You can apply to join the Beacons community. We are invite only, but if you mention UGC webinar in your application, I will know that you were here today and I will make sure that we let you in. So we would love to see you there to continue the conversation. I post brand deals weekly and sometimes more than weekly. So sometimes they're UGC, I would say there may be like 20 to 30% UGC opportunities, more traditional brand deals, but there is the occasional one. So we'd love to see you in there. Yeah.
So that is the meat of our conversation. I think let's jump into the meat. What is the most effective way? Do you want to read the question and I can answer? Is
Yeah,
that easier?
So this one's from Sarah. She said, what's the most effective way to pitch a brand you'd like to work with if you don't already have an internal contact there?
Yeah, so I would go back to the research slide. I think first off is understanding whether or not they're actually looking for that type of content. Um, I hate to say it, but it's almost like when you apply to work at somewhere and they're like, you didn't get the job, but we're going to hold on to your resume. I don't think they really hold on to your resume. Um, so yeah, like they may say, we'll reach out later if it's a good fit, but just sort of make sure that the brand is actually doing the things first, do all your brand research. And then I would look and see probably on LinkedIn is one of the better places to look. Who is like their social team, see if you can get an introduction there. Another great place to look or start building connections is if there's like an American Marketing Association or like social media meetup, social practitioners meetup. There's a lot of them going on in almost every city. I was just in Des Moines. Any Des Moines, any Iowa folks on the chat? No? And they had a huge, like mega monster social media and influencer marketing meetup that I got to attend. And so there's probably a community in your community. Go network, meet people, get some referrals. But yeah, I would reach out to the social team first. The other thing to consider is sometimes brands work with agencies over doing it in-house. And so if you get on LinkedIn and you look up a brand and they don't have like a social team, that means that they're outsourcing it to an agency. And so you may want to do a little bit of research to see, do they have an agency of record? Is there an agency that handles just their social? So a lot of it's going to be digging. So I would do your research first, reach out, and then make sure that your content aligns with the sort of content that they're trying to produce. And again, don't forget that it is a numbers game and it does get easier as you get sort of a proof of work and a portfolio under your belt.
Yeah, those are great points. And I will just say too, on your point about agencies, if you are interested in working with an agency or finding an agency contact, I just dropped a link in the chat. Beacons maintains a top creator agencies list, and they're always excited to hear from Beacons creators. So next we will go to Lila, who said, I'm over 10K on TikTok and Instagram, but I also want to do UGC. How is it different from pitching for regular brand deals other than the fact that I don't post on my own socials? How do I make it clear in a pitch to a brand that I'm looking to do UGC?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of my baggage and a little bit of partiality. I almost want to know why you want to do UGC creation over being an influencer, because there is a lot of money out there right now in like the micro and nano creator space, right? Like micro influencers, nano influencers. Like you don't have to have the last name that starts with a K and ends with Ardashian to be like internet famous, right? Brands. Okay, let me take a step back. So every year we do this report. One of the top trends that's been like trending upwards, especially as like Gen Z, enters the workforce and kind of like gets really moving as a generation, is the fact that people want to buy from people that look like them, right? Like if you are a person of color, if you're LGBT, if you're a female, like whatever your sort of like specific niche is, people want to buy from folks that look and believe and act and behave like them. And so if you are a influencer with some sort of specific voice or perspective, there's a lot more space for that. And there's a lot of brands that are reaching out, like outbounding for that sort of thing. So it's cool that you want to diversify a little bit, but my question is really what's like the outcome that you want to do from that? Especially if you've already worked so hard and have at least 10,000 on each, like really, really think about like what's your big goal at the end of the day? The superpower of influencers is their audience. And so the fact that you have 10,000 people that follow you says a lot about you. On the UGC side, I think the fact that your following is not super, super big, I wouldn't worry about too much about, letting the brand know that you're focused on this over that. I think just being really transparent up front, and then also maybe sharing some possible UGC style content that meets that brand ready rule so that you have something that you can show to a brand. But the fact that you're already a creator with a following, I think says a lot for you. So that's sort of my answer-y non-answer. Isabel, is there something that you might add to that?
There's a follow-up here from a different person than the one who submitted the question, who says, I'd rather do UGC because I'd like to work with brands that my audience doesn't seem to be interested in, but I am. So that's why I sometimes try to turn my deals into UGC. Interesting follow-up there.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Um, I I'm curious. Sorry, just like more questions within questions. This is like influencer therapy session now. So yeah, I almost wonder like why is your audience? I assume your audience is someone like you, right? Like people tend to follow people that are like them. Like why would they not be interested in something that you're interested in? And is there any way for you to cultivate that audience or like show them why it's interesting? Maybe it's like I hate to say this, but it's been so interesting. I've had a friend who's been trying to get me to watch the anime One Piece. If anyone's familiar with One Piece, it's more than 1,000 episodes. I would rather trample my mother than sit down and watch 1,000 episodes of a pirate anime. Um, and then finally, she just got me to do it, right? So it was just a matter of like working on me, cultivating that perspective, and like me trusting her enough to watch One Piece. And now I'm like several hundred in. So yeah, that's my non-answer to it. I think with the UGC creation part, if you're doing it because you think your audience won't like that product or service, again, and I think Isabel said it a little bit or alluded to it a little bit early, like UGC creation is a very small pot of the greater influencer marketing budget, right? A lot of big brands have budgets for creators. And when I say creators, I mean like content creators like Binging with Babish or Red Means Recording or like YouTubers, right? The Mr. Beasts of the world. They have a pot for that and they have a pot for influencers. And often UGC creation is used to kickstart campaigns, but not necessarily to sustain campaigns long term over time. And so really kind of think, you know, am I leaving money on the table by focusing specifically on this when I have an audience already in place that I could potentially sell something else? So another non-answer. I apologize. I haven't like not answered any of these questions now.
No, it's tough. I mean, everybody kind of has to make their own business decision about what you're creating. But something I've been doing this past month is I've been running a series in the community on personal branding for creators, and kind of authenticity and like why it matters for your image and your content and your link in bio and your media kit to be consistent and to represent you. And like that's really tough sometimes because finding a great content niche and like being successful in it sometimes means that you don't always get to focus on everything that you like, right? Because it's like outside your monetization model. So unless you are like the type of creator that is like the lifestyle creator where people will buy anything from you because it's from you. Maybe you can work towards that point. We'd love to see you be successful in that. Otherwise, like you're probably going to have to pick and choose a little bit. And maybe you can give UGC a try and you can see like if it's something that's going to be more lucrative for you based on where you're at currently or not. But in the end, like keep your business decisions in mind and like keep your bottom line in mind too.
Well said.
All right. I want to try this one. DJ says, what are 3 key things a brand needs to know to move forward with a creator or influencers in a paid capacity? Since you are on the brand side, I feel like that's a good one for you.
Sure. I think number one is what is the output expectation? When you are at the point of being a Kardashian, you can charge $1.1 million a post, but that's way beyond the realm of most brands. And so I like the bottom line really comes down to if I give you X amount of money, like what can I expect to see with what frequency? What's the output that I get for my input of cash or free product access or PR boxes or whatever it is that's that exchange of goods and services. So number one is output. Number two is often who else are you working with? In the same way that someone who is a model might sign an exclusivity deal. There's often folks doing short-term exclusivity, like if you're working on a shoe thing for the next 3 or 4 weeks, like I only want you talking about my shoes, even if you have a channel completely devoted to kicks. And so that can often be a deal breaker, especially if you're like an influencer where that's your specific niche, if you have to just talk about that one brand. But a lot of brands don't want to get lost in the noise, right? They want to be kind of the front and center and focus. And then 3 is often samples of work. That's usually something that we ask to see relatively early on. So if you have not put together a portfolio of work, if you don't have at least like samples of a little things, even if you're just getting started, you don't have any brand deals. Just do a fake like, oh, well, let me show you this mug that I got from XYZ organization, right? And do something the way that you would do it for a brand because they want to test it. Because again, it's all about that authentic connection. So if you can't fake sell this cute little stuffed animal or whatever it is, then it's probably not going to be a good match. Or if you're working with an energy drink company whose whole brand or vibe is like extreme and loud noises and yelling, and you're coming off really meek and quiet, then again, it may not just be a personality match. So yeah, what's the input output? What is the exclusivity, or like who else are you working with? And then what portfolio stuff or work can we see to see that you do good things?
Amazing. Hope that was helpful. That one was asked live, not pre-submitted. So if you're around in the chat, DJ, and you have follow-ups, let us know. What shall we take next? How about, what is the best response to a brand that wants to gift you products, but you really want to work with them, as opposed to paying?
Yeah, I think there's two different schools of thought on accepting gifted product versus paid product or paid compensation. So number one is if you really like the brand or service, like I am a huge like coffee fan. So if one of my favorite coffee brands were to say, yo, I'm going to send you this PR box, you're going to do this, but I want this number of videos, like I want to work with that brand. In a perfect world, I'd get paid. But the fact that I'm getting $300 worth of coffee access is sufficient for me, and that's good for me. So I think that's one world, right? Where if you're getting the free things, if it makes you happy, and you're willing to produce based on that, great. There's no shame in that game. If they want to just pay you in product, I would have a sincere conversation. Again, we're all adults. I would reach out and say, hey, it's great that you would like for me to create content with you. I appreciate the offer of product, but typically when I'm working with a brand, I'm looking to get compensated. And so I want to see, is there an opportunity for us to either collaborate, or can we do part product, part pay? And I think that's always the challenge. Like, it's hard to ask for money, but if you're really sincere about growing this part of your career or this part of your business, you just have to start getting really comfortable with those like money conversations. The last thing I'll say is a lot of the time, like PR boxes can be sort of a foot in the door. And so I hate saying that because like some brands do take advantage of influencers and like just keep sending them free stuff to get free content. But sometimes the first one can be a freebie. Like sometimes it is a test drive, it is a test run. And so I would also, again, have that serious conversation with whatever comms or marketing person you're working with, saying, hey, is there an opportunity for us to work together in the future? And if they say no, just know that product trade out is often the thing. But the minute you get on a PR list, I'm on a couple of PR lists, it's the best thing ever because I get a box once a quarter. And I was going to say I'm a you-know-what for free stuff. And so you could probably fill in the gap because I would do lots of bad things for free stuff, and I have at this point.
Yeah. It's so true. Like something you spoke to earlier in the presentation is like, don't be recommending stuff that you haven't personally used or tried. So you can think of it that way too. Like if it's not something that you have personally used or tried before, then this really is the right way to start because that gives you a chance to like take the product. And you can also, something that you can say is, if you would want to do a paying deal, but they want to offer you a gifted product, if you haven't used it before, you could say, I can't guarantee a post, right? I haven't tested this. I haven't experienced it. I really appreciate that you want to send it. I'd love to have it. And like, give it a try. And if I do love it authentically, then like, I probably will post organically about that. Otherwise, like, be prepared that I'm not willing to sign anything that says I'm going to say I love it if I've never tried it. Like, I gotta test it out and if you want to say that I have to post something, it might be negative, right? And I've seen creators do that. They're willing to provide like, what do they call it now? It's like de-influencing. When you say, the true thing about something. But a really interesting follow-up question or tag along question to this in the chat. Large amount of gifted collabs, does that affect your taxes? And some influencers who've said you could end up paying more in taxes than what you would get in product. And I think that's such an interesting question now that the IRS has convinced us all that they're like stalking our Venmos and keeping track of every collaboration. Like that really comes down, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear what David says, is like, would you have bought that anyway? Like, is it something that's important and meaningful to you and you're so excited to have it because you might have gone out and spent $2,000 or $5,000 on it? If not, if you would never buy it and you don't even think you want it, maybe it's not going to be worth it for you from a tax perspective. But the value in something can certainly be there if it's something you would have wanted.
Yeah, I think that's a great angle to approach it. I would always add, like, talk to your tax professional. There's a lot of folks that are out there that specialize in doing taxes, like for influencers and creators. If you had gotten into this game like 5-10 years ago and you went to an H&R Block or something and said, hey, I'm a creator full time, they would have no clue what the heck to do with you, right? But now there's enough folks in this kind of global creator ecosystem that even H&R Block has like a form for you to do if you are a creator. This is not a plug for H&R Block. Do taxes wherever you want, whatever makes you happy. Do your own taxes. Don't pay for them if you have to. But yeah, like the other part I would go into is if you were working for an organization and they were to buy you X number of dinners, right? Like sometimes we'll go take clients out and we'll buy them dinner. It might be a super expensive dinner. We might be drinking $100 bottles of wine or whatever, right? Most of them are not reporting that on their taxes because it is like a gift with sincere intent to motivate. So yeah, I would talk to your tax professional, consider whether or not you'd buy it, and then also just really look at the true value. I think sometimes we get scared that we know this item retails for X amount, but the fact is, like, I can probably send you a super nice bottle of liquor that retails here in San Antonio for, $95, $100, and I'm buying it for like $16 wholesale, right? So that's the other part of it, right? Like, don't try to figure out if there's a wholesale price that you can report as well, because a lot of the time we're not sending you the retail thing. We're not going into a Sephora and buying stuff off the shelves. Like, we're buying it in bulk from some sort of broker or sending service.
That's a great point. Good reminder about inflation and how we're all just getting ripped off all the time.
Every day.
Excellent. Well, on that note of impact and value and return on investment, this is a follow-up from DJ about I put off brand deals for a while because it wasn't, native to the content I was making. So now I don't have case studies. And how do I prove the ROI for a brand? And I actually, when I wasn't sure how many questions we were going to have submitted for this event, which as it turns out was plenty, I wrote up a question that said, like, does UGC have the same or better return on investment for brands as traditional influencer content? And how can I communicate the value of what I do as a UGC creator to brands? So I think that, like, how can I communicate my value and show my impact, my ROI, is at the heart of this question from DJ, and I'd love to address that.
Yeah, I think hard metrics are always great. So you may not be able to do a case study, but if you are on, depending on what your creator platform of choice is, you can go back often multiple years and look at view data. You can look at click data. You can look at, if it's like a YouTube video, like what's the duration or average duration that someone watched a piece of content. And so numbers like that, in the absence of like, I had them use my affiliate code 800 times and I generated this much in sales. Any sort of metric think of it from like the marketer's perspective on the brand side. I have to go to someone and be like, oh, I picked Isabel because she had all these videos. This is the average watch time. This is the average number of users. This is the average number of clicks for any sorts of sponsored content. Like, they're not asking, well, how much direct revenue did they drive? They just want to know that it is an actual like positive point of spend. So the case study part is also interesting to me. If you worked with someone, a lot of the time they may not have an issue, even if they're no longer at that company, just giving you a little bit of feedback or giving you a referral. I used to work in higher education, and I still have like ex-students and ex-interns who have come to me and said, yo, I know you haven't been at the university in like 6 years, but do you remember me? and I lie and I say yes. And then, yeah, and then, they get a note or a referral or a connection or whatever it is, right? So, yeah, I would definitely check, are they still at that company? Did they move up? Are they at a different company? And can they, if not give you a direct case study, can they be a reference that someone can call? And we're starting to see that a little bit more. That wasn't super popular in the beginning, but I'm seeing some brands asking for like 2 or 3 brand references as they start to book, like you said, you're a macro creator, so like larger creator talent. We're not seeing that a lot with like smaller creators or like micro or nano influencers, but if you're like a big YouTube following or a big TikTok following that has 100,000 plus followers, then people may be asking you for references, and that can often go a really long way.
That's a great suggestion. References definitely can go a long way in this industry for sure. Just wanted to say we're getting a number of pricing questions. How much should I charge? How much should I charge for this? I have this many followers. It's just so hard to say. We can't really sit here and tell you like you should charge this much for a post. Like there's so many variables, deliverables and usage rights and exclusivity and all kinds of things that go into that pricing. We do have a pricing calculator at Beacons that takes into account you can connect your socials, and it takes into account your demographics and your following and your engagement rate and everything. So I definitely recommend trying that. We are also going to have another Ask a Manager event in November, and we have a past Ask a Manager event that you can watch the replay of on our YouTube, and we do talk a little more specifically about pricing there if you have those questions. This question is, we're coming up to the end, so we're probably going to take this one and maybe like one more, because this one should be quick. You addressed this earlier in your presentation. Big brands with big budgets versus small brands that are maybe easier to get in touch with. When do you reach out? Which ones are better? It just depends.
Yeah, it just depends. I think the better question is like, would my audience or my content resonate better with the audience of the big brand or of the small brand? But yeah, to your point, I think a lot of the time smaller brands, especially if they're what we call D2C, like direct to consumer, they don't have a brick and mortar or a storefront. They're completely e-commerce. Those tend to be super responsive and really easy, or much easier to get in touch with.
Yes, that is a really great way to flip that. All right, so I think that's really the last 2 questions that are left in there in the chat are from me. And so if anybody has a final question from one of you who's here live, we'd love to address that. Otherwise, kind of closing notes, I will say I'm going to drop the community link in the chat. Again, mention UGC webinar. And we have tons of content and resources and places to chat with other creators and get more questions answered. And thank you all so much for being here, for asking great questions, for participating in the chat, and give a round of applause, drop a clap emoji here for David and the team at TINT for being here for us and answering these questions and giving us this incredible look at UGC.
Awesome. Thanks, Isabel. And keep an eye out for that email probably in the next week or so from Future of Marketing.
Yeah, I can't wait personally to get on that list and start checking that out because I think it's going to be amazing. If you guys have follow-up questions, this chat actually remains active, and the replay will be live right here on this page as soon as we close the event. That's what's great about this Crowdcast platform. It just pops right up, and so you can go back and take notes and catch everything that we said. And thank you all again, and we will hopefully see you next time at a future webinar. All right, bye everyone.